I know you can't tell, but I'm not from here. I grew up in the Philippines, and this is my concept of a farm. Those are rice terraces. And we would take field trips to the mountains to see the rice terraces, and they're beautiful. And that's what I grew up with as a farm. But really, I grew up here, which is Manila, which is in the capital of the Philippines. And a lot of people don't know that it's a megalopolis. You know, when I moved to Pittsburgh, and someone told me, the city's over there, I said, where? You're in it. I'm like, no, I'm not. Where? Because this is my concept of a city. It's millions of people. And then I went to Carnegie Mellon and met my husband, who's from Pittsburgh, and stayed in Pittsburgh. And then I realized that farming was more than, the rice terraces. And we moved to Stanton Heights in the east end of the city. And it was there that my mother-in-law and her partner bought a 5-acre piece of land that they had decided to farm, and they called it Mildred's Daughters. And it was where Grow Pittsburgh was born, and it was the first time I touched soil my entire life. And I loved it. There was something, so renewing about it. It was so transformative. It was amazing to see how a tomato actually grows. I remember harvesting green beans and understanding for the first time how hard it was to harvest green beans. And I took green beans for granted. And I was just so amazed at that process, or the pruning a basil plant. All of those things. And Barb Klein, who was my mother-in-law's partner, really taught me how to farm. And this is the part I get really emotional. I'm going to grab this. And the power of women, to feed us became obvious for the first time. I was in my 20s, and I consider myself a foodie. I went to the finest restaurants with my father. Before I moved to Pittsburgh, I lived in New York City, and I knew everything about food. But I really didn't. I knew nothing about food. Garlic scapes. My goodness. Just garlic scapes. And so I decided to understand food more, and I decided to teach, about it, and I decided to teach children. And I had this blog called The Brazen Kitchen that was pretty soon was being published in Pittsburgh Magazine. And I was talking about sustainable food and health and farming and kale. Love kale. And I started doing films about women farmers. And Maggie Robertson, again, changed my life. This film I still watch from time to time. And, I'm a mother. She's a mother. And I saw her 2 cute little daughters. So sweet, like running around the farm. And she would show everything to me. And I did a film about her. And again, that changed me. And I started reading more and more. In the Philippines, 60% of the population lived near poverty. And when I moved to the United States, I had this vision of what was then, called the first world country, where, I thought it was utopia. And not quite this dichotomy that existed where I grew up. But I realized that wasn't true. The United States has hidden poverty. It's hidden from the cities. You don't see it as much. The shanties are not next to the buildings. So a lot of people don't know about it, and a lot of people are immune to it. So I was writing about kale, I was writing about quinoa and health, and writing about how to eat healthy in Pittsburgh Magazine. And I realized that a lot of people don't even have a choice to get kale, or have the opportunity to know what quinoa is. And so I felt a little bit disturbed by that a little bit. And I said, well, there must be something. I can't talk about kale when 40 million Americans don't even know where their next meal is coming from. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the turning point was. And I'm going to show you this short film. And do you mind pausing that for a second? Just suspend your disbelief at the fast food part. That's a horrible part of this video, but please watch it.
Here's a startling number about a preventable loss. The average American family throws away a quarter of the food it buys each year.
It's like walking out of the grocery store with 4 bags of food, dropping one in the parking lot, and not even bothering to pick it up.
A report by the Natural Resources Defense Council says
40%,
nearly half of all the food produced in the United States never gets eaten.
Nearly 35 million tons each year.
At a cost of
$165 billion.
We see a lot more waste come out of fast food restaurants.
We only keep our product in here to be served to our customers for a certain amount of time. For example, our chicken would only be kept for an hour and a half.
Food waste is a huge issue. We went to one freestander. Just that one day, they had 150 pounds of food waste.
1 in 4 American children.
That's 1 in 4 of our kids, 17 million.
Start each day not knowing if they will have the food they need.
I'll go without food before my kids go. Budget is down to the penny, and it's just not enough still.
When's the toughest time for you?
When I eat and my mom doesn't.
You go to work and put a smile on your face, but then when you come back home and you realize, I don't have any food.
It is crazy that is happening in a country with 730 football stadiums full of uneaten food. It's insane.
Much of what's currently being wasted could be used to feed families.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Environmental Protection Agency have announced the first ever national goal for reducing food waste.
Basically challenge the country to reduce food waste by 50% by the year 2030.
So I saw this statistic in 2012, 40% of our food supply. And I know how hard it is to produce that food. And that was a big turning point where I realized, why are there still 40 million Americans who are hungry in this land of plenty when 40%, almost half the food that we're producing, is going to the landfill? This is a real container full of hummus. There's a lot of problems that cause this. One of the problems is date labeling. This hummus is about to go bad today, but you could redirect it to someone who can eat it today. So that's what causes 40% of the food. And it's about 62 million tons of food every year. We waste more food today than we did in the 70s. And I know if you read statistics on health, a lot of things changed in the 70s. A lot of processed food. That's when diabetes and heart disease started rising. 70s was a big turning point in our food system. If we grow every food that's wasted in one farm, a mega farm, it would be 80 million acres. And this farm would consume all the water used in California, Texas, and Ohio combined. And enough food will fill a 40-ton tractor every 20 seconds. It's really hard for anyone who doesn't work with food, and I'm not sure how you do it. I can't imagine those numbers. Very hard. It's about $200 billion a year. It uses 18% of our cropland and 21% of our fresh water. It is the number one material in landfills. And it causes 16% of the greenhouse gas emissions. It is second only to road transport. And if we took all the food waste and make it a country, it would be the third largest cause of greenhouse gas emissions next to China and the United States. So this is a hierarchy that the EPA and the USDA put together. And the first is, of course, to reduce it at the source. And second is to feed people in need. And as you saw in the video, 50% reduction by 2030. Right now, this is a triangle where 97% of all food waste ends up in a landfill. We are doing a really good job making food for the landfill. That's a very healthy landfill. The UN has set the same goals. Sustainable Development Goal 12 is all about responsible consumption. 12.3 is directly about food waste. The United States is a little bit behind in adopting the SDGs, especially in these times, but reducing food waste affects so many other goals, most notably hunger. Since 2012, when I read that report, awareness about food waste has grown. So a lot of people didn't know this 40% number then, and now every time I go somewhere, most people know the 40% number. 75% of adults are now aware that we're wasting almost half our food supply, and this is good. So it was really a point where I asked the question, where are we going to put the food that's not cosmetically viable, the food that's about to go ripe, the food that doesn't pass cosmetic standards? Are we going to feed the trash, or are we going to make sure that it goes to someone who needs it? And that's how 412 Food Rescue was founded. So 16% of all food waste happens at farms, and three big barriers: low market prices, high labor costs, strict cosmetic standards prevent food that is, cosmetically inviolable from being sold or being harvested in the first place. 2% happen in manufacturing, 40% happen in consumer-facing businesses, and most of it actually happens in our homes. So our work with farms is only beginning. We have an ugly CSA. I know a lot of you have seen these trends about imperfect produce, misfit markets, and we have our own. We work with Penn's Corner Farm Alliance, and we buy seconds from them, and we resell it to folks as an ugly CSA. This is that ugly CSA, and the number one comment we get from our subscribers is, "This isn't ugly enough." They want it uglier. And so we have about 250 subscribers to this CSA, and it grows every year. We also have a Gleaning Program, and what we do is we harvest wild fruit from the city, wild urban fruit, and we turn them into products. So to Don and to the Kretschmans, we do have cider that we make from it. We make hard cider from crab apples, and we sell it to raise awareness for food waste among folks who wouldn't care otherwise, but if you give them a drink, they do. A lot of it happens in our homes, and we have a food education program called Cooking Matters, which was founded by Billy Shore, who's actually a Pittsburgher. And we teach our nonprofit partners, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit, to teach food education to the people they serve. And Nick Goodfellow from Pitt has been a great partner for us, and we bring this program to many, many of our partners, and we are hoping to bring it to 100 partners this year. There's Nick. So it also includes grocery shopping and education about reading food labels. But really, for me personally, this has been the most interesting. And it's the second largest source of food waste, 40%, which is consumer-facing business. And that means supermarkets, full-service restaurants, institutions. And it's interesting for me because it's a difficult logistics problem. Well, food in general, moving food is a difficult logistics problem. But this one, the problem with it is that while everyone wants to recover this food, it's not easy. It's not easy because this food is, I love this slide because I always love to ask, what do you think this is? Close. Guess. Come on. No. This is all the Walmarts. So you know where you want to live. And I like to show this slide to people because it shows, it's a great visual of how distributed these retail network is. How many there are. Hundreds of thousands of tiny locations with tiny bits of food that's difficult to recover. And that's, in statistics, we call that the long tail. The long tail is tiny, tiny, tiny quantities, but so many of them. And this is why Amazon is such a success. A store is limited by the amount of shelf space it has. Amazon has no shelf space. So it can sell the tiniest thing to the biggest thing, and it doesn't matter. And it's a lot of it, right? So that's really the long tail. And it's the same as food waste at retail. There's a lot of retail businesses, and the trucks can't be used to get them because they're tiny quantities each time. And when I say tiny, 2 boxes, 1 tray, a carload. And typically the way we've recovered food, canned goods and stuff like that, mostly from manufacturers, is to get a truck, to bring it to a warehouse where it would be sorted, and then to other warehouses and to someone who needs it. I was talking to someone yesterday, having dinner with them, and they said there's only 23 major distribution centers in the entire country where our food comes from, where our food gets shipped, and that's very little. And what happens, though, is that food needs to stay alive. And with food waste with food surplus of small quantities of unpredictable frequency and needs to be consumed right away, it won't survive this process. And unfortunately, most of that is produce. Fruits and vegetables that are very hard to come by for people who are dependent on food banks and food pantries for their main source of calories. So what we did was, what if we can take all of these locations and transfer the food directly, same day, each time, 1-to-1. That's thousands and thousands of trips every single day, thousands and thousands of vehicles. So it all started, quite accidentally. At first, we were doing texts through friends who took on the East End Food Co-op, the Whole Foods, but we weren't fast enough. Food was still getting thrown out. So we said, well, let's go to Facebook. And we started posting it on Facebook so that our friends and their friends can see it. And what we found is that people would respond right away. Of course, I would take a trip to the nearby Giant Eagle and get, whatever they had and bring it to a shelter. It's not a big deal. It takes 20 minutes. And we grew so much. We had so many drivers. We outgrew Facebook. And we had to look to technology to truly coordinate them. And what we did was nothing new. We said, if we had Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and all of these delivery services in the city now, why can't we coordinate our drivers that way? So we did. In 2016, we launched Food Rescue Hero. It was a little experiment, and this was our little app. So millennials don't know who that guy is. I would show this at college, and they're like, who's that? Dick Tracy. And NPR covered us and called us the Uber of Food Rescue. And this is a sample of our app. And I would play this, but we don't have a lot of time, but I will later on, if you're interested, show it to you. It basically works the same as Uber. You get a push notification if you're a volunteer, and we tell you, oh, look, Nathan, at the Giant Eagle 5 minutes away from you, there's 3 boxes of food. Can you take it to the shelter that's really a mile away? And you would feel so guilty, since it's 5 minutes away and it's only a mile, that you would actually say, yes, I'll do that. So we have about 500 retail locations in Pittsburgh alone that we collect from, that we distribute to 600 distribution sites. 600. And these are some of our Food Rescue heroes. The middle guy's Paul. He obviously loves it like Pokemon. Our app has been downloaded over 10,000 times. It is the largest transport network in any single urban region. And Nathan was right. When I was talking about this idea, people would look at me like, sure, that's so cute. And Nathan was lying. It's 5 million pounds of food recovered in 3 years. In If you go in Pittsburgh, you'll see this on a cloudy night. We need you. So whenever we do a push notification on the app, within 6 minutes, someone is going to take the food. And I remember the first time this happened, and it wasn't my friend or someone I knew. I was amazed, and I wanted to know everything about this person. So I stalked them on Facebook. I said, who is this guy taking this food? And that happens so much. In 6 minutes, whenever we do a call for our food rescue heroes, someone's going to swipe that food. The average distance someone travels is 5 miles. It's very close. A lot of people ask me, then why doesn't the nonprofit just pick it up? For those of you who work at nonprofits, you know the reason. And the reason is that there's no one available, right? We are all so taxed for resources. Everyone's doing 10 jobs. And just to pick up food is just not, there's not even space for that. That's a real food rescue hero. She sent us that photo. And then there's the skeptics who say, that's so great. It's a great way to get volunteers and civic engagement. And, they don't really believe it works or that it's reliable. And I always tell them, we only miss 1% of our rescues. We're as reliable as waste management because I know sometimes my trash doesn't get picked up. 99%. For all the rescues that we put out there, 99% of the time someone picks it up. To date, this is an old slide, we've completed 40,000 rescues. 40,000 trips have been made. And this is where it starts being a little bit strange. When I do tech conferences, they stop listening after this because this is not about technology now. This is now about how do we actually get this food to people. All of this food, this 40%. This technology and this transport is just 1/2 of the equation. And I'm going to show you a few snippets from a few articles in the last few years that will give you an idea of how we're not really feeding people. Okay? So, in Pittsburgh Quarterly in 2016, some food pantries report that more than half their clients come less than 3 times a year. When someone experiences food insecurity, they experience it for a year or more. It's a long-term situation. And if you go to a pantry only 3 times, there's a reason why. The food is available, but you're not getting to it. 33% of households making $25,000 or less, only 33% are near high-frequency transit. That means there's one bus in the morning. If you miss it, that's it. So if that was the day the food pantry was distributing in your part of town, and you had to get to it using a bus, and you miss the bus, that's it. You have to wait next week. And if it's only twice a month, you have to wait 2 weeks. Studies about transit and its effect on health have been done everywhere. This is in Seattle. That studies a difference of sick days between people who are near transit and people who aren't. Last week, the Pittsburgh Foundation released a report that social service programs don't align with realities. They don't consider our real life. I am a mother. I have all the resources in the world. I can barely get to one grocery store every week. And now I have my groceries delivered because I don't have time. Why do we think that a single mother of 3 in poverty has more time than me? That if I build something, they will just come. They'll find a way. Another study that talks about commuting and how it impacts our health. Charity still only reaches about 4% of local people in need. So the transport that we do, the nice, shiny technology, is great, but it's only the first step. We can't just work in the same distribution system that we've been working with before because it's not reaching people. So we have to also change the way we distribute food and the way we design food access. We have been so used to the food banking system for the last 40 years without any material change in it that we're still not reaching people, but it's okay. I come from a for-profit background. I worked for Colgate-Palmolive, and I sold toothpaste. I designed Colgate, which you probably use, and you think that that is, just toothpaste. We spend millions of dollars studying you, how you buy toothpaste, what you buy with toothpaste, when you buy toothpaste, how you get to the place that you buy toothpaste at. There's a lot of thought that gets to you to buy the toothpaste. When we do social services, we say, oh, they need food. Let's make food available right here in the middle of nowhere. Let's be open twice a month from 9 to 3 because that's convenient. We don't design social services so that it's actually convenient to people so that we reach them the same way corporations want to reach the people who they want to buy their stuff. And I think we really, really need to look at social service with that critical eye and gauge our success only if the people we want to serve are actually served. And that's what we're trying to do. So this is a goal of the city's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, which is a great goal for a transit organization, is to get someone, every household in Pittsburgh, to access fruits and vegetables within 20 minutes travel of home without needing a vehicle. So I read this, and I said, wow, Amazon is putting stuff at the apartment building. They don't even want you to wait at the post office. We'll put the post office in your apartment because we want our packages to get to you faster so you'll get more stuff from us. So we said, okay, well, why don't we do the same thing? So we worked with the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh and the Allegheny County Housing Authority, and we said, we know that your job is not really to distribute food, but why not? Why don't we make all of housing also food access points? In the same way that Amazon brings packages to our homes, and then Amazon started bringing packages to the groceries because when we go grocery shopping, it's convenient to get our package as well. So we said, well, why don't we put it also at daycares? So when that single mom picks up her 2 kids, she also goes home with a bag of groceries. She doesn't have to take another bus with 2 kids. And if one of those kids... So for those of you with young kids, one of those kids has a temper tantrum. You just want to go home. It's like, I don't care. And so she doesn't have to take that extra trip. So we did a study now. So we created the 600 distribution network in Allegheny County. And we said, okay, well, let's map the 600 distribution points, and let's overlay that on top of the existing food distribution points, what we call traditional networks. And let's see how many more people are now within walking distance of food. 100,000 people. Allegheny County alone. 13,000 of whom are in poverty, which mirrors our poverty rates. That's the first time that has ever happened. So we work with the food banking system to make sure that no amount of food gets wasted, that perishable food, which is fruits and vegetables, get to people who need it in sensitive time frames, that work with donors to go where there's most need. We're not restrained by buildings or storage or anything like that. We don't have food that goes through any warehouse. People ask to tour 412 Food Rescue all the time, and we said, well, you can come to our little office. This 5 million pounds of food we saw, 0 of this food never came to us. We work with recipient organizations of every single kind: shelter, daycare, family care center, senior center. And we donate food to food banks and pantries. We don't sell food. We also direct transfer organization, as I showed you. So let's talk a little bit about impact and numbers. So I just like to show this slide to show that when we released the technology, it took us faster and faster to recover food. It took us 21 months to reach 1 million pounds without technology, 9 months to reach 2 million pounds, 6 months to reach 3 million, 4 months to reach 4 million. 87% of what we distribute is fresh food. Fresh food that's hard to come by. Fresh food makes up only about 10 to 15% of national food distributions. 45% of the fresh food that we recover are fruits and vegetables. And then we did a survey using the USDA survey, which is the measure that we have to measure food insecurity. And we surveyed our recipients. This is an actual senior receiving some food. 88% report improvements in food security. 92% agree that it helps them make ends meet. And in housing, only within a few months of working with them, we have ended all emergency calls for food. So much so that the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh gave us that money earmarked for food. This is some of the environmental impact for those Pittsburghers. The bike lane impact, over 6 years, removed 1,200 cars off the road. Our environmental impact in 3 years removed 997 cars off the road, the carbon equivalent of that. So it's technology, logistics, and social engagement. We are in 4 cities in 3 years. And I just want to show you a video of some of the people who do the work.
I am a mother. I am a wife. I am an entrepreneur. I am a thinker outside of the box. I am created and destined to give more than I receive.
I'd rather give than get stuff in return. I think they'd probably say that's a big part of my nature.
I want to be part of making us a better place for grandchildren and for great-grandchildren.
This has been a problem for a long, long time. And for some reason, America has just became a country of throwing stuff out. Like, the minute something's not useful anymore, just toss it out, instead of going like, could I give this to somebody?
412 Food Rescue is the missing link between people that sell food, have food, make food, but for some reason that food is usable but not saleable. And it's the missing link between those people and people who need food and don't have enough food. Senior centers and housing authority, public assistance, that kind of thing. And most of that food is perishable items.
When you read that 1 in 7 people in your county are suffering from food insecurity, that feels really powerful. Like, 1 in 7 is a huge number. None of my friends have food insecurity. So that means there's all these other people out there that you don't know walking around the sidewalk that don't know where their next meal is going to come from, or don't know if they're going to have fresh food in a week or two.
You don't realize how much food is wasted until you see your car totally stuffed to the gills with food that people pick up every day.
It's such an easy thing to do that it would feel like a shame to not do it. And it makes such a difference to people. I can't think of another way I could spend my time with so little effort to have so much impact.
You can just take a few minutes out of your day to do it. It really contributes to the cause.
I do 412 Food Rescue because I've been there before. I used to be a client at the East Liberty Family Support Center, and fast forward to 6-7 years later, I'm now doing a 412 Food Rescue trip where I'm able to give them a donation of food that I've rescued from a restaurant.
I think it's one of our big world problems. We have so many. I think this is one I can be helpful with. You know, I'm not a politician, I'm not a financier, I'm none of that, but I can transport food.
So just a quick note on farms, and this was really, 412 Food Rescue was born out of the respect that I learned for farmers at Mildred's Daughters. And it was, for me, immoral, on one hand, to waste all of the work that everyone is doing, and on the other hand, also knowing that someone wants that food. So today, less than 5% of on-farm food is being recovered, while 8% of rural population is food insecure and do not have access within 10 miles. In urban areas in Pittsburgh, we struggle with 1 mile. In rural areas, within 10 miles. And tax legislation needs to support farmers. A $620 million in tax incentive for farms is equal to $525 million in donated meals. And that legislation, a lot of that has been worked on and introduced, and hopefully it passes in a few years. So my question to you, is how can we help? I am teaching a course this year on rural hunger in Greene County because 412 Food Rescue is an urban intervention. And I am really curious about how can we bring this work to the rural areas, to the farms. What can we do? What can we do to work with you so that, food that you can't sell, that you can't harvest, actually gets to someone who needs it? Thank you. Thank you.